There are people in boxing and in other things that have been making allegations and roles with the intelligence community leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since. People out of the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices and corrections offices, they've been planting evidences because of a certain way they are victim predators, hyper victim slash hyper victim hyper predators, black pupils. I am not a lawyer, but they are recorded with involved with criminally foreign influence readings of the law and of statutes, of precedents, of reality, of definitions of nature, because of how they are victims slash hyper victim predators. But if we address it this way, they have quality of aspects. In other words, everyone came through campuses where the short words were replaced what they were communicated to be. For our founders, who asked us to communicate it as themselves, as the face of James Madison, who got George Washington to agree with their plan. James Madison first had to come up with a plan. Slavery was entrenched with different countries, North and South. There was no way of getting that out. Other because there were crazy slavery laws against every single person. Had it sustained and had it sustained with color since some ancient times to hide from what nature was communicating. And is communicating about the existence of a breaching method, a human factory nature breaching method. Nature shows us even further the needs to discern the scientific value of a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal judge. The sciences share an identity, boxings. Is what boxing? Anyone who tries hard at boxing, it's going to make you shush yourselves and others. Make that sound. It's not a joke. Could be made it's a joke, but it's positive. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling share this identity grouped and individually. This identity that the sciences share. This breaching method forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the names of the human species body A through Z. The individual species body volume of a body of individual body, species body of individual bodies. All groups, differences, plural, are in demonstration of it being grouped difference slash S. For example, because it is also the identity of value progression that has the other species bodies manifest this way too, distinctly but non-distinctly and simultaneously, but therefore also further hyper simultaneously. Nature shows us the need to discern how it as itself is distinctly itself as the hyper simultaneous, like your complete identity, and as the simultaneous, like your identity as the tip of your nail or the tip of the hair on your head. Vaccines. So fake things have been put in databases since founding. Many countries have been shared before our founders were born. They were already shared here and there. The suburbs were designed tactically denatured to force, trick, hurt, and persuade. While the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts in nature is blamed on other things, and that's sustained. All truths jumping in on that, rolls with it to keep that, investing it more and more. So screening itself more and more through all these hyper additional motivations, natures, needs, interests, natures of industries, natures of employments, the breaching method assigned. They have doctors who are also ones with badges who have been fabricating audio and video transcripts with prosecutors and judges with overt criminal enterprises, their patients, their whole families. They have whole families that work together with mental health locations where they do um, forced mental health evaluation. They just fake conversations with people that have been doing it on and off campuses, where they're lying about how they feel about other people as an identity theft, fraud, slander method role. They take pictures to pretend fake exceptions of knowing people, and to measure and maintain how that is such is brought up too. When how even bring it up, it shows other things. Other was recorded than they've been pretending with professionals of all natures of industries, including interbranch, and the difference of that in the intelligence. They never stop needing to hide live progressions at other locations for the employments of their victimhood slash victim predatorhood slash hyper victimhood slash hyper predator victim predatorhood. That's increasingly critical to understand, because a breaching method designed those laws before our founders were born to keep people blaming other things, others, ourselves for what that breaching method caused, like slavery. They have our founders blamed for it right through our schools, artistically through layers of apparent motivations and based only on implications. The nature of the classes of the sciences appreciation has stayed abridged. And that's self-valuable because the readings of the law, they were shown to it by this hyper sophistication. See, we have behavior pathologists, we have behavior experts, pathologically, criminally foreign influence. For the doubt, not even a doctor, we could delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence natures and souls when they speak or when they say silent, regarding the roles of the sciences each, regarding these critical hyper evidential facts, constantly increasingly value that we have to use to lead our logic, our reason. Instead, we have intercity creeps next to campuses, certain type of victim slash hyper victim. I don't need to call them that. In other words, but it's also they don't even realize because everyone's attached to fake words. And I think the motivations are because of how many nations have been shared here or there on off campuses like Central Connecticut State University, using phrases like crime, uses words like crimes, and phrases like criminal justice, while tactically criminally foreign influence, factory nature, quality aspects, nature uses, use slash S roles, and nature roles, and nature as criminal insidiousness slash hyper criminal insidiousness, which we can discern because nature will show us this. Nature shows can be used to heal the world everywhere at once. Three natures of industry, in conjunction with pantheism slash hyper pantheism, which is not about many gods, except for how God was used as a God variable. And it's about the identity of the hyper simultaneous. This is a science that has been abridged since semi-ancient times, which we are directed to refer to as ancient times. Note with self-value, a whole bunch of ways that's actually recorded. How the databases had been employed tactically, criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence against everyone. We know that when we hear these things in history, but we hear them coupled with the glorifications of names and things like that, the way they teach history, positive or negatives. They are positive treatments, negative treatments as collusions to keep from being discerned the functionality of how reason is led by the functionality of how the hyper invisible but still discernible is distinct from the invisible but still discernible. And so we have this with appreciation of the participle natures, which are an extent of the hyper invisible. They come with a means to discern it. They are invisible but still discernible. But there are additional names for the identity of a verb. And the verb's hyper invisible, but still a discernible identity, as each identity is. It's simultaneously greater than itself, more finite than itself, and with active relativity to itself. There are proofs that before Boolean logic, before the guy Boolean, generations of him were born, already algebra had been revealed, and English had been revealed. The people of England don't even remember the history of English because all semi-ancient countries, including all modern countries, all colonial countries, they were tortured, extorted, and were fact, treatment, nature, enslaved, individually grouped, all groupings of humanity. This breaching method knew correctly that they would have to they would make voicings with humanity's volume science as the species volume science. Nature communicates by showing us there are three volume sciences that are connected with the distinct, totally distinct species. Fish have eyes just like humanity. No, distinct but non-distinct and simultaneous, per that which is for further hyper simultaneous because it has birds, has insects, has the bodies of life of Earth's parts. See, but humanity is Earth's parts, and as it's a special difference. We have been systems tactical ulterior from its own and being used remotely. Like when they say America has wealth. That's because America was made by multiple citizens of more than one country. And our name is and their name was never liberated. The Constitution was never liberated from its original abridgments. The nature of the debate, of all natures of debate regarding this, contain quality aspects in nature and demonstration of this. How it has been gotten away with is how the three branches of government and or the exceptions tied to them simultaneously with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Insidiousness is the logic of A through Z. People that wouldn't be there had the short words been proper, had the nature of debate not contained criminally foreign influence, fact, true nature, quality aspects, nature, and tactical delusions. So we have to have experts on types of things. But with this breaching method knew that. Knew how the branches of government are being generated by nature itself. But now, as ourselves, as countries A through Z, suits and ties, counters, and exceptions as collusion /S. Through all hyper additional apparent motivations. So they've been planting with the teachers and the leaders of the kids from off campuses. Also collusions with intelligence families with their kids. As people at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And not legitimately pretending they are legitimately with that. And because they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and roles with all names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, involved with them with remote uses of all locations /S while being used remotely by for worse. That seems less too. So the difference between the overt transnational gangs coming into the country, you have to understand the difference between the North and the South. 3 ways. And you have to see president /chief 3 ways. And because there are 3 distinct identities of hyper invisible but still discernible. One of them only being discernible, referential with the other 2. And it comes with the value of what came before this being as itself and as its conjunction to what's most critical, as a subject or as a fact, or what came before it. Because how nature communicates is by it shows us sometimes what came before it is more important. A breaching method had been here before. Before you could understand the breaching method against America's founders, you have, you have to understand them as president/chief. And you have to understand the difference between our founders who were counter extorted, who had to be counter extorted by our founders. And there are proofs that Native Americans helped them do this. Because they remember other ways. They are shown every human difference when it's used as systems, support systems, tactical terror, as they are being, under the guise of healthcare, under the guise of legitimate judicial subjects treatments, names treatments, timing treatments, and credibility. The news has been planting evidences, identifying thefts, frauds, slanders, fake motivations with intelligence community next to their locations and next to state capitals. These are people involved with the World Trade Center attack who can be shown roles with how the election locations originally and still are many ways more so than our founders with as the design of the suburbs. They weren't even born. This is designed, and slavery was entrenched north and south. So who's going to say that a tea tax was what caused American Revolution? That's used to measure and maintain other things, others ourselves blamed for what caused the crazy laws that were a human fact tribute nature breaching method /S. It was a singular breaching method, a hyper extraterritorial, hyper criminal foreign influences designed to keep other things, others ourselves, like foreign influences, blamed for what it caused and keeps. And then when you sustain that, then it knew it would become real. And then the people that were the victims of it would self-value, having been, blaming it on other things, others themselves. Simultaneously, use /S of the identity the scientists share. Therefore, the names of everyone and of the hyper. Additionally, we are ground voicings incapable of defending their use of words, syntax, names, reality, and of affording discerned what is actually capable of being discerned relative to every subject, relative to every instance, let alone the ones positive or negative. We have to discern, and nature shows us how nature shows the difference between positives as criminal and citizen natures of positive and negative. So George Washington agreed with our founders to get us told to get the Constitution on a bridge, and demonstrated the roles with torture, extortion, and slavery that Hartford Hospital had, and the people associated with the location because of their roles with the breaching method. Forgiveness is not to give up, but it is not to blame them leaving out the breaching method. It is not to blame our founders for having left slavery entrenched when we have the evidence to know conclusively our founders wanted us not only to explain that they didn't want slavery entrenched, they wanted us to explain and demonstrate to people that have gotten away with pretending it's debatable. They've been used to measure, to sense for the breaching method. Employed the interbranch, including their sexual differences, to sway their judgment, and all their family members, everyone's tied to everyone, everyone's a psychopath. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born, with slavery entrenched north and south, designed tactically to nature. There are hardly even worms left in the soil anymore. We cut the lawn, take the glass, and throw the grass away. Everything was a living body, Earth. We long clean water and stuff like that. Everything goes in the thing. Oh, but we long the economy. You guys speak, leaving our founders communicated for us not to, the breaching method forced the economy to be a hostage nature of wealth and or as nature. It's only capable of going downhill unless we bring it back to its identity of relationship to itself. Its hyper identity, its hyper nature, its hyper identity. And I refer to it as a nature instead of an identity because we can only discern an extent of it. Any subject we could grapple with individually, grouped, or together simultaneously. It has those three natures not only all together. Uses of words like extremism and radical, the government recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, as the three branches of government and its exceptions tied to them. It also includes, when I say exceptions tied to them, it's also the neighbors and businesses and the differences between conjunctions and adjacents to the state judicial branch offices. Like Wethersfield Pizza is involved with wire crime acts and methods, and uses of confessions by the breaching method, which is distinct from uses of confessions by the way we know, all the different ways. That's why we have to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. See, where we hear allegations made against people every day, but then they're pretending other people are making allegations, or they're pretending they're making excuses too, and they're mixing up the difference. They're switching names and forging names and staying increasingly collusion/s with the worst natures of crime scenes and body dumping spots, uses, and the names next to them. Increasingly involved with the different use as names involved with difference of the use/s consciously of the difference between adjacents and conjunctions to the Connecticut State Judicial Branch offices and the Connecticut State Corrections offices. They have roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, in his dependent capacities, with a whole bunch of people that know my name that I don't know their name, and his lawyer, Robert Chevalier, and various natures of federal criminals and their neighbors and family members, like a John LeConte, a Thaddeus Grabowski, a Dominic Lipriata. These are also people involved with Wethersfield Police, with people and Hartford Police families and Rock Hill Police families, and Cromwell Police families, mayors, Wethersfield mayors, involved with child abuses and people on off Hartford Hospital, a whole bunch of people on off Hartford Hospital, involved with people with the name Cololo and Julian, a Joshua Julian, involved with untimely deaths and with child sex offenders, leaders of kids, increasingly involved with retired Wethersfield police chiefs with the same house/s involved with them. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed has something to do with their roles, planting evidences and fake motivations at the corners of streets, like two mobile gas stations in Wethersfield. Has them making exceptions, fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me. And when I made the exceptions too, they use that criminally foreign influence. These are people involved with programming and with the television. Apparently, you know, there's a Leahy family in a whole bunch of police departments and police forms. People with the name Mendez. There are Mendez police and people with the name Demain, a Mike Demain, and there's an Adam Demain. I never saw an Adam Demain around anywhere. I saw him on Facebook. They have roles with some child offenders as police forms that are interreligious spots too. These are roles with various natures of organized crimes as people that are supposed to be police forms, and it's not legitimate how they're with the roles of different natures of organized crime on police forms. Has the acting professors at Central Connecticut State University roles with training state police, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, roles with whiting forensics, increasingly intercities involved with child offenders, personally, the people that work there. There are a bunch of different natures of employments there. These are people also involved with the various natures of courts and all sides of criminal and civil cases, while at the same time they switch their names and put sequence shifts and fake things in databases, and they speak that to each other and to others behind people's backs and with the news, planting evidences on off crime scenes increasingly preemptively too. Why? Because while how they're used remotely. So everyone is forcing people to speak through others, and when they're alone, they're attaching them to fake and changed transcripts. That's why and how we have to examine what they've been doing. I caught them a whole bunch of methods. They have a whole bunch of rules to counter things, and in other words, who tells on someone? It's why and how. For example, manifest to where and how we can observe the breaching method is where and how we can observe other things others ourselves blame. Where our founders, for example, told us to get the Constitution on a bridge, and where and how those abridgments stay, where they came from, how to respond to that. What really wasn't is blocking those short words that we are all capable of making and are being corrected to properly. See, if everyone's trying to correct each other, see, we have the the state corrections offices involved with the United States military, with families named Cololo and Della Fera. These are also with judges and prosecutors with a whole bunch of ones with their family members. Ones with the name Scalora too. Involved with a whole bunch of police forms and the differences of their titles and what their form is. When they say, oh, was the CIA corrupt or was the FBI corrupt? Those questions can't be entertained. At those locations, they have roles with the World Trade Center attack. Now, these are people that have been posting comments online because the prosecutors and judges were shown that while they're used remotely, they already recorded themselves with criminal uses self-valued of criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, precedents, and while tactically delusions raw. And so you have sick natures of people at the prisons increasingly involved with crime scenes, including with the crime scene of a serial killer. The same people that are trying to be about his corrections and or his punishment. In other words, they're using that they're using torture, extortion, slander methods, and their tactical delusions while they're being used remotely to keep blame on other things, others themselves. What is actually demonstrated to each person at each location /S. And we are this is where and how we are hyper additionally identities and voices, not just the jobs, but as the ground, for the way the ground nature works. We're supposed to speak for the other species. Oh, you saw that about the frogs? They're dying. They're part of the positive value nature progressions. We have to do something about that. This is how pantheism works. Pantheism is led by hyper-evidential. This is how it causes evolution's means and gifts out of nowhere. It is nature show /S. It is the hyper nature show /S. So we could agree to make nature shows as an industry out of nowhere. Because the North and South, they still haven't become one side. And they still are slaves who are trying to keep everyone else slave because they're playing the game of the economy, leaving out exceptions in exception nature, how the Constitution unabridged and with nature unabridged shows us to read that. This is what criminal insidiousness of nature is about. Where hyper additionally, it is about a special difference. See, but that the difference between the branches of government, they're still criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. And the difference between them being that or the people with the prisons and or on and off the state corrections offices, on and off the state judicial branch offices. The state corrections offices is that a town line the way it is? No. Whether half Weathersfield, half Hartford. And know how the state judicial branch offices. It's in the middle of Weathersfield, but it's on the edge with the bridge over going over the river. With exception demonstration thing. Because that's exploited. So Weathersfield Pizza and people with the name Oliveri. I never saw Eric Oliveri out in his life. I only know him seeking me out, record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. Increasingly rolls with people that live around me. Forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to take collusions with people with foreign and domestic intelligence, military, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people next to body dumping spots, totally different body dumping spots. People tied to shootings, murders, child abusers, leaders of kids, intercities too. They make confessions vertically and horizontally. Oh, how come you didn't say anything? They attached me to fake conversations with kids, with police when I was a kid and I was an adult. And that was not, there was no conversation. I never went to police station at all as a kid. And they put other in the database. This former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with other agencies. And they're increasingly leaking because you guys are responding with these are courts with switching and forging names. These are roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes by judges A through Z, by lawyers A through Z. These are lawyers. There are people involved. There's a Trantol, I barely had any words with them at all. He's the ones making things up with the prosecutors and judges that are planting fake motivations, planting evidences with them. Fake motivations. They have something to do all along Route 3, which is one of the conjunctions and adjacents to the state judicial branch offices. They have something to do with the ad placements, with the internetworks, and people with the public television services. There's a Peruta family is involved with Russians. In other words, I never had a personal conversation. We tried to make a fake exception. I'm one of the ones involved with Weathersfield Police Chief Cintron, his family, involved with a whole bunch of other countries, and people that have been sticking fake things in databases and on crime scenes on Elm Street tied to him through time, intercampuses, has something to do with their right to lie. And in news articles where they're using that to cover up where they're doing it where they don't have the right to lie. So it has something to do all along Route 3. Like, and their roles with like the different intercultural and because these intercultural and intracultural identity theft, fraud, slanders is one of the things three-way manifest increasingly. Where and how we are non-distinctly hurt by the breaching method. And it is also a scientific value where and how we are non-distinctly hurt by the same breaching method clearly so many ways manifest. We appreciate the hyper-evidential, but instead, everyone's blaming other things other than themselves and preventing demonstrations of how we are non-distinctly hurt. For example, by all kinds of ways self-value with descriptions of the past. There are descriptions of self-value roles with the criminally foreign influence databases, and we're leaving that out. U/S of that. It's including relativity/hyperrelativity to which is simultaneously greater than and more finite than what they said. and it comes with its identity relationship to itself. The Constitution unabridged hyper additionally from nature as nature, so nature can see itself. Nature is a word being used for identity because we could only discern an extent of the identity that is everything at once. But anywhere the smallest thing is, its complete identity relationship to itself, and the value of that is inseparable from that thing, even if you make it up. So this is how computers work. This is how everything works. There are 5 distinct identities of time that share a complete identity as a distinct identity of forever nature that is making more of itself through temporary / lasting. Space nature is only increasing volume, where volume equals value as nature / nature as value. This is where evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere come, or else we sense. See, but this system we have been taken to and through systems tactical ulterior from the one that the ancient republic for which we stand, its campuses system, and the exception nature that came with it. The republic and its campuses in English was revealed as a group, but had to appreciate the species volume science being led by how the species how nature communicates. It answers our questions. It shows us what questions to have, how to answer them by having the species volume / S system, by having individuals of each species, individual species with group difference / S, for example, the way it is. So English was revealed to teach this. Yin Yang was revealed to teach this. The significance of yin yang will emerge through suits and ties, encounters, and exceptions stay to some ancient trap. We were all once. The republic for which we stand when it is unabridged, and the Constitution when it is unabridged, it is hypernated pure and appreciates these nature shows that began in ancient times before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to become criminally foreign influenced. And that was sustained. Now you start self-valuing syntactically. Not really. Now you're not really communicating it, but syntactically. And that's exploited. Oh, that's what you said. So also Harvard Hospital has lawyers involved with this. All kinds of scams. Millions and millions of dollars just individual families have been stealing with their mental health, putting transcripts with judges and prosecutors, just individual judges and prosecutors. There's a Judge Killian involved further with some child sex offenders, a proven principal child offender he had roles with. And there are people seating juries who are tactically delusions raw, involved with healthcare. People are speaking about drugs with passions and emotions. You guys aren't even looking. That's where they're keeping the overt criminal enterprises, private ones. And then when regular people go in, you got everyone's criminally foreign influence together because their use of location / S. This breaching method used them remotely since they were kids. In other words, the adults who are, and the difference in adults, that's why watch the people using the word adult or kids. So in other words, someone brings up actual acts online and people change what they say. What kind of a sick, demented person, like Ron Adams is someone writing, he starts changing names with police, making things up, hiding, obstructing justice. And worse, because he's screening people involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones with grammar school kids and middle school kids, high school kids and colleges. They're all connected. These are people with the fire departments, with involved with various natures of organized crimes and wire crimes, and with child offenders timed, as the same names involved with as families on elderly homes, involved with elderly programs. See, these natures of employments were employed. They can't defend their logic and not self-value sick people who are going to describe the law other people's names on a mass scale too. Having been but in other words, all natures of employment are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw slash hyper criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally tactically delusions raw. And this can be discerned, but you have to get on paper one name in sequence. But for every year since before the World Trade Center attack, Central Connecticut State University intelligence families and Trinity College intelligence families have been planting evidences with people with from Washington D.C. and from the World Trade Center with names on my street and in my area and next to the sides of parks. They have been planting evidences on the sides of parks, fake ties, fake nature of ties between people. These are the people involved with the judges where their predicate acts methods are involved. So please get Judge Napolitano onto paper with the Fox Connecticut News, one name in sequence. He doesn't have to, if he doesn't want to get involved, just get them the one name in sequence. Follow mandated law. I want a response for the principal child abuser's confessions. They changed that and they put me to fake emails. They have WTNH involved with that. Also with the corners of the streets. WTNH has roles with intelligence families on corners and exceptions on Church Street and Old Weathersfield. They know my name. I don't even know their names. And they're switching names roles with the exceptions. And other federal evidences crimes, roles with different natures of industries too, where they lock sense and sensibilities, where people's jobs, they're going to make up facts and hide facts. They also play people by spreading illusions. The agencies, and they have an extent, they recorded themselves with extents of consciousness of their roles with criminal foreign being used and having been used remotely criminally foreign influence. So they have further names with a Michael Emmett with Weathersfield Board of Education, with town offices and intercities, and with other schools, and with narratives. These are black KKK themed military police also involved. They have roles with planting evidences between campuses through time. These are various natures of police forms involved with this Michael Emmett, and judges and their family members personally involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. That's why I'm going to call them sick, degenerate pigs, to get them on paper. You guys started. You guys have to have follow mandated law. Pick one name in sequence, because when you go to the court, you keep getting confessions. The Britain Superior Court has some Eric Mendez and people tied to him increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, attaching little kids to fake locations, uses of corners of buildings, timed collusions, part of the way they confess and demonstrate roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and foreign and domestic intelligence at the same time. And we have black pupils, whites of eyes. So we have other means to discern this too. And they've been increasingly how it's KKK, black themed, interreligious with the same ones. So there are intelligence families that put me to fake ties and fake natures of ties to people associated with where they make fake real exceptions, but in other words, they're fake exceptions at the same time. In other words, me knowing people that I don't know at all, like this Joshua Julian. I don't know him at all. But I know his name was repeated to me by a Mark Violet and by a Justin Klavinskis, who has some KKK and black themed people with New Britain Superior Court and Hartford Courts families and other courts families involved with the Connecticut District Court, has people involved like with Brian Silver, former director, with prosecutors and judges involved with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with child sex offenders, medical offenders. There are people with the Leahy family, and there are people, in other words, that attach me to fake conversations with them categorically about their different natures of cases and organized crime, that they are involved with the federal criminals in those cases, proven. And they lie about the outcomes of cases, including with the news. And these are roles with criminally foreign influence uses of names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts, as they were with in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center attack towers. There's a Ninth Circuit Court that was right next to it, and or is right next to where it used to be. And that court had post-dated documents proven after the attack had been presented in the court. And that proven led up to the 2006 district court case. But instead of being Manhattan, now it was in Connecticut district court. And these are the people increasing. I didn't know it was at the time it was involved before the World Trade Center attack. The FBI and the judicial branch and with the other branch of government, with mayors, other natures of people associated with Central Connecticut State University. But this is how they make confessions while being used remotely, criminally foreign influence, which are confirmations to abuses of the location /S. Central Connecticut State University has roles with people in my third grade class and another class when I was in third grade, where they do a trick where they use truth for lies. Someone can make a communications with someone when you're walking by, and you don't even know who that person is, and and they don't know you. They just repeat what the intelligence community tells them. But it is timed collusions with a whole bunch of foreign intelligence, overt criminal enterprises, and roles with insidiousness, logic, natures, and styles of logic, A through Z. So there was a Ryan Garcia, for example. I couldn't find on his YouTube page. I'm going to get a link to his page. I want to lose this YouTube. Well, anyway, it's a professional boxer. I just lost where I am now. It's a professional boxer who noted child abuse acts. Now, even if he made it up, I'm not saying he made it up, that can be used to show actual child abuse acts. So he's telling the truth. And they have been changing what's actually recorded on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, the intelligence community, for how they use remotely also the sense and sensibilities of the whole industries. So you had, before you could understand how so ignorantly everyone, A through Z, speak for about economies, A through Z. We're in a semi-ancient trap clearer than day, let alone the modern one. In other words. So the intelligence community has roles with uses of words like propaganda. They have the difference of how they're sophisticated. This breaching method employed. They will have this, okay, you guys describe this crime scene. And they have the person, the expert on it is teaching the class. And the differences between that, all employed by the breaching method because they could discern black pupils. Only fake speaks for the law. Only fake is capable of speaking for the value of the Constitution unabridged. Only fake is capable of speaking. That can't afford to exist, let alone to protract. Convictions regarding the Constitution unabridged. And hyper additionally, the value of where and how every modern country is and has been. Sickly, non-distinctly hurt by the same things /S. And it uses how sickly, non-distinctly everyone's hurt. And it uses how demonstrations of that come hyper additionally with the demonstrations of how the ground was tactically denatured for that. So it stays on that. That stayed to screen the breaching method too. Ugh. But we can discern, we can get this out. All we have to do is admit. So we could use and it's not going to reap the rewards of the whole species body helping, like America, China, Russia, and then we get India censor. We get Iran censor. Not a sensor like sensor. I mean sensor like a computer sensor. It's going to hear, speak, sense. Oh, wait. That's going to hurt. Okay, that's going to pop that, but if you do that, it will cause a positive value nature progression. We could lift water together better than free. Way better. In other words, we could do things that we can make readings of laws and the syntax for it. Like this, I'll train us. Species coach, I'm here. In other words, we can end the wars tomorrow. You guys keep letting them use names. Oh, it's this or that, because then that, what's that do? Keeps people that may be voting. Oh, but yeah, because we're democracy building in this country. You guys can't speak about how and why our names are simultaneously shared and simultaneously not. And when we don't go by the system, it demonstrates negative value nature progression to act nature. They come with the breaching method demonstrated too, though. But that comes also simultaneously with other things others ourselves. Blamed for things our founders communicated for us to blame on the breaching method singular. The laws that were upon the colonists were individually grouped and together. So their differences were used to screen also hypersingular employment of them. Employment /S of them. And now while it's going on, all the /S parts individually grouped and together. All takes on that, leaving out the breaching method. All takes on that simultaneously, leaving out how nature uses individually grouped together. All takes on that tactically ulterior from nature's system, leaving it out. Oh, but it was not their fault. Oh, of course, I know. It's a breaching method's fault. That's why it's important to discern where and how non-distinctly other things, others ourselves, are blamed for what non-distinctly hurts each voice and has. So our presidents, they come into the presidency and they find out countries like Russia and America have been torturing each other. But in other words, there's so much at once, no one can speak of the hundreds of names that are shared. Now as systems tactical ulterior from the one that is increasing more subjects and names. All exception nature and demonstration, same thing. We could be systems other than its own, but it will force space nature transfer, nature being Earth's a special difference, and you being Earth. But it's a special difference forced from here. Lease of Hadith. Forced space nature transfer, more probably, and more practically, and more scientifically, is what the ancients would have called lease of Hadith. Observed it as forced space nature transfer. Nature being again that the ancients would have appreciated nature as a word to appreciate identity. So we have all these people that, and they want their time. You know, imagine all the negative things had to hear about and read about Colonel McGregor, Judge Napolitano, the people involved with the instances they have to read about. See, if a judge, the difference between a judge or a police form or a prosecutor, in other words, or a political figure or a private industry or, a lobbyist or people associated with the lobbyists, or people that just associated with the same locations, like next to the state capitol at the same time. This is a sequence shift self-valuing roles with instances where it has relativity, breaching method, keeping that relativity denied. Every science is about the identity of relativity / hyperrelativity. They have theories on they have theories on relativity, regardless if it's Albert Einstein's theory or whose it is. That's used to measure and maintain the identity of hyperrelativity / relativity, because it is relativity, but it is and the only one that can be the identity of relativity that way. In other words, it reveals why and how humanity has eyes that look just like the fish eyes, or fish eyes look just like us in Andorra. The species body, totally different species. Deer, they have 2 eyes. They have quality aspects. They have male, female, babies. The birds, male, female, species, volume, 3 volumes. And this is about the invisible but still discernible. But it is simultaneously about the hyper invisible but still / hyper invisible but still discernible. Here's the other sequence / simultaneous nature. True conversely / hyper conversely. So in other words, I can't move on. I can't do business until you get one person onto paper. Before the World Trade Center attack every year since, the FBI and the courts have been planting evidences to hide what I caught them doing, because they affected confessions to me. And as use of location / estimate of campuses, they have a Dean Judd involved with too, international, and people with a whole bunch of people from Wethersfield, involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with New Britain and with West Hartford. Ray Clough and Joe DeMoro had something to do with West Hartford. I never did any psychedelics with them with West Hartford. They had something to do with, Ray Clough used the word psychedelic. Even if that wasn't him, it's people that he did go and have communications with, and people that were his teachers growing up that were involved with the intelligence community. Like there's a Mr. Neville who was involved with something to do with the Cololo family, with houses and names next to Trinity College. Joe Aiello repeated that. The only times I knew him, he repeated that. He involved and demonstrated that he involved Johnny Duke, the dinosaur of boxing, with his family, with spots next to Trinity College, and Johnny Duke used to live there on Zion Street. No, they have roles with people from Afghan leaders and kids from years ago, involved with the people with war crimes of Wethersfield police, and mayors involved, and probation officers, also involved with body dumping spots, murders, shootings, threats with knives and guns and bug spray, and wire crime methods threats. As people involved with the police forms too, state police increasingly with the Wethersfield police, as ones with Vermont State Police, Rhode Island State Police. Who knows the people with this name, Mike Violet, and their roles with the military, interstate, and there's a Eric Jensen. I don't even know his family members' names. These are like old time intelligence people that have roles also with the transnational criminal enterprises and the counters to them, because they hide live progressions because they are being and haven't been used remotely. Whereas in how they have logic experts who think like at campuses, like in New York City. What do you think causes negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures? Not with the formal identities of law in New York City tell you or told you. They have to hurt people to keep that blame down other things, others themselves too. What that causes additionally too, that this breaching method is giving them the immigrants and giving the fake sides between the Democrats and Republicans. They have collusions, criminal incompetence, all around the board. Yeah. Get in my paper one day, see. I'll show you how to do it. All sides, all things, boxings. I'll teach us things.